this particular COP29, we are it cannot be underscored even further that the climate crisis is serious and severely upon us. Philippines, the land of my birth, is being hit by typhoon after typhoon, and we're anticipating 4 more typhoons to hit the Philippines. There has been severe flooding in Pakistan, severe flooding in Bangladesh. Spain just lost over 200 people drowned in the flood. So the climate crisis is real. Multilateral development banks have a huge role to play in climate finance. A lot is expected from the global south and climate vulnerable countries. And this upcoming COP will be one of the more important discussions to move the money in the right direction. On the ADB and AIIB side, we have always been vigilant and critical of the portfolio. For the longest time, ADB was a financier of coal power plants, and we're glad to see after the Energy Policy Review of 2021, the coal financing agenda has been slowed down. I would say phase out, but we are seeing some loopholes there. And AIIB has not financed a coal power plant, but has been very much exposed to the fossil fuel gas portfolio along with destructive large hydro. So without further ado, what is ADB and AIIB doing in COP29? To answer that question, I will ask my colleague Naz to step in. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you're all good. No, now before we dig deep into the discussion, I would like to humbly ask for everyone's prayer. For all the victims of Typhoon Christine in the Philippines, which left a devastating impact on various parts of the country. We just passed on our National Day of Mourning a few days ago to remember all the departed ones. So now, can I ask my colleague then to share the screen now? Thanks. Now, thanks then. Now moving forward to the discussion. Next slide, please. Just to give us a full picture though on where we are now at the climate crisis we are experiencing today. At the moment, we have seen record high in terms of average global temperature. And according to the recent data, just in June 2024, it marked the 13th year or 13 consecutive months rather of the record-breaking global temperature and a year round of breaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius pre-industrial levels of surface air temperature. And each year, we can observe unprecedented levels of global warming at a much faster rate. And although some researchers would argue that we cannot deduce the impacts of this for a short term, say for a period of 1 year, we cannot really deny that the empirical evidences on ground, especially the devastation brought by the extreme weather events that have taken the many lives of people and wreak havoc to communities. Next slide, please. And from here, you can see in the pictures that we have gathered, could clearly see the climate-related disasters in various parts of Asia. And I think just by residing in the region and as someone who personally experienced this, I could attest that every time we are hit by a typhoon, it worsens and it only gets stronger though. And it only means that if this trend continues, then damages will be irreversible and we can no longer stay on track with the 1.5 degrees C, which the IPCC's 6th assessment report deemed as code red for the humanity if we overshoot this threshold. So next slide, please. All right. On the other hand, climate finance is, of course, as we all know, is determined as one of the crucial pillars of enforcing climate actions. But on a global scale, we're still lagging behind. Although climate finance has reached the average of 1.3 trillion dollars between the period of 2021 and 2022, a huge gap is still needs to be filled. And according to the recent study made by the Climate Policy Initiative in 2023, the cumulative cost of climate change in the business as usual scenario at present can exceed 10 times more than the estimated needs to maintain the 1.5 C target. And there are major issues as well, in terms of its delivery. One would be the disproportional distribution across sectors, given that finance for adaptation is comparatively lower than mitigation. And at the same time, development finance institutions still channel 57% of this public finance. And on the other hand, a little over 20% of the funds are packaged in a form of market rate loans, putting, of course, low income countries into further debt distress. So next slide, please. So as you can see here, this year marks the 29th year of climate negotiations. And this year's COP is having the theme of in solidarity for a green world. And it is interesting to note as well, that this is the second consecutive year that COP is hosted by an authoritarian regime, and the third year of a petrostate, that will be hosting the COP, as Azerbaijan's economy is primarily supported by fossil fuel industry. And notably, Azerbaijan has a long history of poor human rights record, and the country has even institutionalized restrictive laws on CSOs, crackdowns on human rights and environmental activists, lawyers, and even media have become a norm, in the country. And this is indeed a double whammy, and we anticipate that COP29 would not be as smooth sailing with the shrinking space of in the host country. And this year's COP is as well is also focused on continuing or building upon the UAE consensus from the COP28. There's this road back to Paris, which is expected to be concentrated on the new rounds of NDCs in 2025. And the countries are encouraged to revisit their commitments to keep track on the 1.5 C target. And the main show for this COP would be the approval or the new collective quantified goal would be decided this year, which is setting once again new climate finance targets. Now it is yet again a tug of war between the global south and the global north. Provided how climate finance has been rolled out previously, and as we may and we must make sure that important principles like the common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities must be in place in these new targets. So next slide, please. Now, aside from the party states, it is also important to zoom in on how multilateral development banks are taking the COP stage and the climate space in general. And the roles of NDBs in the climate space has been or have been increasingly dominant, especially in setting climate targets and financing schemes, for instance. For one, MDBs have adopted different joint principles and have conducted their annual reporting of their climate targets and contributions. And if we remember, financial institutions, these joint financial institutions in 2015, after the landmark Paris Accord, Climate Accord was adopted, Climate Action in Financial Institutions initiatives was launched, setting out 5 voluntary principles in mainstreaming climate change actions across their operations. And this has been the basis of their quote-unquote climate leadership role. And second, directly quoting from their joint statements, no, they place themselves as one of the global stakeholders on climate finance architecture, making their way, as again the leaders setting the bar on global climate action. But looking closer, how did these banks fare through this year, through the years? So next slide, please. So in this presentation, we intended to spotlight just what have Brian said, the ADB and AIIB and how they operated vis-a-vis the number of joint frameworks and principles they signed up for. For one, there's this joint MDB methodological principles on Paris alignment. So it was initiated in 2018, but after 5 years of delay, it was finally released in 2023. So both ADB and AIIB acceded to this document, no? And this serves as a guide, though. They call it building blocks, no? For MDBs on aligning their investments to 1.5C targets. And upon studying it, we've seen no we have seen a really limited list on what is considered as universally aligned and not universally aligned. So only mining of thermal coal, extraction and electricity generation from coal and peat are deemed as not universally aligned, which leaves a lot of space now for other fossil fuels and heavy GHG emitting technologies such as gas to be considered as universally aligned. Aside from this, the MDBs also placed a specific, they call it the specific criteria assessment in evaluating the projects, wherein the banks can cross-check specific country context, And this implies that if, for example, fossil gas is not is a part of decarbonization program of the country, then NDBs cannot classify it immediately as not Paris aligned. No? The same goes with other technologies. And from here, NDBs are indeed circumventing their own commitments and obligations in aligning their financial flows with 1.5C. So next slide, please. So in relation to this, not all MDBs have their individual Paris alignment commitments, but again, both ADB and AIIB have their own individual methodologies and approaches. Now, in the case of ADB, in 2021, the bank has fully pledged to operationalize the Paris alignment goals across its operation. So for one, ADB committed to fully align all its sovereign operations in 2023 and non-sovereign operations in 2025. So one of the strategies they see is their own climate finance initiatives. And from here, we can see that ADB set a rosy cumulative amount of 100 billion US dollars from 2019 to 2030 for its climate change finance. And the recent data suggests that the accumulated climate finance hit 10.75 billion US dollars in 2023, over which 57.4% is accounted for climate change mitigation and 42.6% for climate change adaptation. And then, unfortunately, bulk of this finance comes in the form of loans, over which 95.5% is in the form of loans, and only 3.1% was tendered for grants, and 1% was for technical assistance. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. In the same year, 2021, the energy policy was adopted. Updated energy policy was adopted. And after years of rallying for policy changes by the wide alliance of advocates, the bank finally put the coal ban in writing. So that they would support early retirement and decommissioning of coal plants, which is another story to tell, right? And amidst these welcome changes, ADB still failed at ensuring its Paris alignment goals, given the lenient policy on fossil gas and other misleading solutions, including large hydro projects, geothermal, waste to energy, hydrogen, and among others. And notably, some of these this mentioned technologies, for instance, the green hydrogen, ADB has really has an impetus for green hydrogen technologies. That although even on the ADB side, uh, during the ASEP peak, even the bank consultants admitted that this fuel is only economically viable in some parts of the world. And it is really a niche market. And these technologies lead what you called electrolyzers, which requires mining of critical minerals. And again, we have a long list of evidence-based positions on this, and of other technologies. And we would also like to highlight, or to surface the discussion on the magnitude of dangers, of large hydro, especially on riparian communities, and the destruction of free-flowing rivers. And another issue that we wanted to raise is like that ADB is yet to systematically record, collect, and report on the gross or absolute GHG emission of a project that needs to be accounted for, as early as the project appraisal. And this scenario, or in this case, it makes it even harder for us to track or monitor the bank is or the bank has been accurately or diligently reporting its total emissions. So aside from this, again, there's no clear commitment on taking responsibility on the past harms and grievances it brought, by financing fossil fuels. And there's no reassessment on its ongoing project disbursements, including the Jamshoro coal plant, for instance. And when we questioned about this, the ADB would really dodge it back to us, saying they're not accountable because the projects were already closed. This is in the case of Naga coal plant. Right. Next slide, please. So in the case of the energy transition mechanism, to date, there are two coal units piloted under the ETM. And based from our previous and ongoing position on this, we see that ETM are set really to set to drain funds, so public funds, with hundreds of millions of dollars allocated as compensation to coal operators, not for decommissioning, but for refurbishing plants, to use potentially more polluting fuels in the future, like ammonia co-firing or refuse-derived fuels. And in the meantime, these plants will continue to generate profits for their shareholders, while local communities and workers remain exposed to harmful emissions. And noting also that the owners of these plants are basically coal expansionists. In the case of 011, its owners are under this its owner under the same consortium has aggressively expanded its coal fleet with the 1,000 megawatts Cherabon 2, despite the controversies involving corruption and bribery on the operator's side. While in the Philippines, it was also revealed that the Abutis Power, among the largest coal operators in the Philippines, finally acquired an 85% equity stake in the Mindanao CFPP. And this approach from here really contradicts the goal of Paris alignment, as it uses taxpayers' money to support corporations that would or that should be responsible for compensating the damage they've caused over the years. And again, we reject the idea of expanding this scheme, and we believe that there are faster, fairer ways to phase out coal in a manner that helps keeps global temperature rise within the 1.5 degrees C. So next slide, please. Now, we were also alarmed by the fact that in 2025, another energy policy review would be conducted. No? And despite being an internal assessment, energy projects in the pipeline are expected to be fast tracked. No? There were some projects in the pipeline that we have also investigated, like for example, the hydrogen technologies, the CCUS, large hydro, and even utility scale renewable energy. And as per the meeting between the NGO Forum and the ADB Energy Department, several experts and consultants are now convened to come up with a base document, basically a draft with certain findings, including what technologies under the current policy that they feel were left behind in the current portfolio. And again, this year's COP, ADB will boast its achievements and new commitments, but we know that it will be pure lip service, and without new efforts to avoid carbon lock-in and to veer away from techno fixes that I have mentioned, this will just continue to give more harm than good, to the people and the environment. So next slide, please. Now, as for the case of AIIB, it had all its chances, to align with the Paris alignment or Paris Agreement rather, at the onset of its operations in 2016. But again, the bank refused to chart that path, and in practice, we've seen a lean investment portfolio, not on clean and green projects, but on fossil fuels. Similarly to ADB, AIIB has released its 2022 Energy Sector Strategy, or the ESS, which also banned thermal coal mining, coal-fired power, and heating plants, or any other projects that are related to coal, including associated facilities. However, we think that the bank needs more transparency on this, especially on its supported sub-projects via financial intermediaries. Just citing one study conducted by the IDI, mentioned that AIIB has invested in IFC's Emerging Asia Fund, over which the IFC directly invested in a cement company in Myanmar that is partly operated by captive coal. So from here, we can see the lack of transparency to that, even though the bank is saying that we're not investing in coal. And moreover, another study conducted by Urgewald also revealed that 62% of the capital market investments of AIIB has been funneled to fossil fuel projects, totaling to 321.41 million US dollars. And if we include the private capital investment in the computation, it even swells to 1.82 billion US dollars. So that's big. Next slide, please. Okay. Right. So aside from coal, the biggest threat that we see to the bank's Paris alignment goals is its addiction to fossil gas. AIB, again, is not an outlier in terms of heavy reliance on fossil gas as transition fuel. To date, there are 8 approved fossil gas projects, and recently they approved the Sukandarya combined cycle gas turbine in Uzbekistan. I think my friend and colleague Bristi would also share an in-depth discussion on the AIB's portfolio later. And now from here, seeing this kind of investment portfolio, we see it that the bank has been or will be locking populations across Asia into dependency on expensive and carbon intensive energy. And now to reiterate, while the bank invests in renewable energy, must go in tandem in helping all fossil gas investments to fully realize its Paris alignment goals. No? And from these premises, we can explicitly say, that AIIB is a fossil fuel bank. And with these operations and schemes, that signifies a grave disconnect, no? It really signifies a grave disconnect, no, on achieving a green and sustainable agenda. So next slide, please. Now, if these financial institutions barely make their financial flow consistent to climate imperatives, why are they claiming that the narrative in just transition? So next slide, please. Now, in 2021, at the height of COP26, the same group of NDBs came up with their joint commitment for a just transition. They call it the Joint NDB High-Level Principles on Just Transition. Although this transition was not explicitly defined, no, in the purview of the banks, they agreed, to set upon commitments to reduce GHG emissions and in aid of or aid in climate resilience strategies. Now, this joint MDB high level principle on just transition is grounded on five major principles. No, one is focusing on lowering GHG emissions. Second, mobilizing resources. Third, mitigation on socioeconomic impacts. Fourth, transparency. And fifth, including inclusive planning, including gender equality. Now, with these principles, while these principles again are set to guide the MDBs, it was also noted that flexibility is an option, to fit this to their operations and their context-specific considerations. Now, if we would take a closer look at this may sound or look good in the first glance, but in practice, both ADB and AIB still lack in providing holistic approaches to just transition. First off, it definitely revolves around the predetermined and corporate-centered notions of just transition. No? It is indeed alarming that they are making the decisions or making the discourses on this process as a fad, among themselves. And simply put, setting the rules, the principles, the trajectories, and even co-opting our language, um, co-opting our language, of this transformative process that we have collectively envisioned with the grassroots and the most vulnerable communities. And again, this set of principles could also mean now that the banks could use their financial leverage to enforce these standards with myopic view and approaches to just transition, provided that the discussion of just transition in this sphere tends to focus on energy-related infrastructure and less emphasis on the broader issues of social and environmental justice, gender issues, reparations, and among others. And even in the renewable energy investments, these banks always deduce that it is absolutely good, while in fact there are large RE projects that cause massive displacement on indigenous peoples' lands and communities, and even impacted biodiversities. Like for instance, in the case of Manar Wind Project in Sri Lanka and the geothermal drilling in Indonesia. So finally, financing just transition at the bank's level would only exacerbate that stress, as I have mentioned earlier in my discussion, given their profit-making agenda of these financial institutions. So I think that's the end of my presentation. So thank you so much, Ryan. If I could give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Naz. I think that was a very rich input, and thank you for laying the scene as to which way the architecture is moving around the joint NDB framework. I'm sure our viewers and our participants would value a lot from thinking about these inputs. So without further delay, I would like to call upon our colleague, Sharmin Brishti. She will look more deeply into the financing portfolio of both the ADB and AIB in the energy space. Um, and we will see where the tire hits the road when it comes to energy investment by both MDBs. So over to you, Brishti.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Nas, for your presentation and in detail knowledge sharing. Hi, everyone. Good day to you all. And I am Sharmina Bishti from NGO Forum on ADB. My colleague Naz has already shared her knowledge. Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
But I'm not seeing the presentation. Please open my slide. Yeah. Thank you. My colleague Naz has already shared her knowledge on Paris alignment and just transition framework. In her presentation, she focused on the climate disaster and which action are needed to survive. She mentioned the Paris Agreement and the joint MDB framework, adding the ADB and AIB commitment. I am going with this insight finance in energy sector. First of all, I want to try to before going my presentation, I want to clear my presentation, and I think I need a clear clarification for this presentation. Uh, this financial insight is made based on the AIB and ADB website. I track those websites to analyze and synthesize data on their energy-related project. This project actually, this project status examined as all over the proposed, approach, active, and closed project. And when the several projects are completed, they wrote down in their website that's in close option. That means this project already completed, and I also count those projects in here, and here I has a present AIB finance from 2016 to now, and for ADB finance, for the finance of ADB, I just mentioned the 2009 energy after the developing their ADB energy policy. Then I uh, I represent all those tracking finance in here. And first, in my first slide, by overviewing the AIB project, we see that AIIB has a 343 project. In this project, they have 45 directly energy sector investment, and 33 project are partial energy investment, and that are actually partially enforce energy focused. When they going with any kind of agriculture project, they need finance in energy sector. So that means 78 projects are included in the energy sectors. That in energy sector, they have 22% finance in total finance, with that amounting to 11.13 billion USD actually. And they have two type of finance. They are including the standalone project, and another one is co-financing project. And they have finance in over the 26 countries across the world. Uh, and yes, next slide, please. Yes, I already said that AIB has a 11.13 billion USD finance now, and in this finance, 8,575 million USD finance has approved, and another two 2,342 million USD has the proposed finance. And they already invested in 26 countries, 26 countries, and and AIB have large finance in Turkey. In this figure, you see that the large one Turkey 1,470 million USD finance in Turkey. And in India, the second largest investment country is India. And they invested here 1,417 million USD, and Bangladesh has 1,345 million USD. And when we said about this Bangladesh, most of these projects are gas power plant project and the pipeline project and transmission distribution project. Yeah, next slide, please. And when we talk about the ADB finance, we see that ADB has 11,998 projects, including 777 projects in energy sector. And in this presentation, I just mentioned South Asian project and their regional investment. When we talk about the regional investment, actually ADB finance India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and togetherly they invested those countries. And I mentioned I just input under this regional investment. Okay, and ADB's total investment now 34.40 billion USD. And based on their finance modality, they have different types of finance, including grant, loan, technical assistance, grant and loan together, loan and technical assistant, those kinds of things. And among all those finance, they had most investment in loan project. Yeah, next slide, please. Within this total finance of ADB, ADB has large financial countries, India. In India, they had 13,000 million USD, and Pakistan 8,277 million USD for, and most of those power project is a coal-based power project. And in Bangladesh, ADB has a ADB has 4,428 million USD. Next slide, please. In this figure, I just separate all those investment in and categorize their sectors and subsectors. And actually, ADB, yes. Most of the time, ADB's project 90% are public and 10% just private. And when we talk about the AIIB, private sector investment in 60% and public sector investment is 60% and private sector's investment only 40%. And when we talk about this, there are more investment in transmission and distribution sectors. Under this transmission distribution, there are I also categorize those things. Actually, and the second largest investment sector is RE support, and then the sector is hydro project, and fourth on is gas project. Next slide. I already mentioned this public sector investment is 60% and private sector investment is 40%, and I distributed and categorized the subsectors: gas, pipeline, transmission, distribution, renewable support, hydro, wind, geothermal, and hydrogen. AIB also invest in their hydrogen-based power plant. And most of the investment in transmission and distribution sectors. Next slide. In the investment of ADB project, there 90% comes from the public sector and 10% comes from private sectors, and most of their investment in transmission and distribution, that is to 20,159 million USD, and the second on is energy efficiency, and third one is hydro project. Next slide. Yeah. Actually, in this picture, we AIB financial project is unique Meghnaghat, which is a construct in Bangladesh, and another one is Jamshor coal-based power plant, which is a ADB finance project, and ADB invest in coal-based power plant in Pakistan, and Pakistan is the large Pakistan. In Pakistan, ADB has largest in fossil fuel investment in Pakistan, and AIB invested in Bangladesh for the pipeline and the gas project. Next slide. And there is a two hydro power project. One is the Tanaho hydro project, which is in Nepal, and in this project ADB finance, and another one's Balakot hydro power project. This is a Pakistani power plant, hydro power plant, and AIB invest here. And in the investment of hydropower plant, almost 6,212 megawatt across various the large scale hydropower project with the significant investment in Pakistan, and including the Upper Trishul 1 hydropower project and the Tarabela 5 hydro project. This project name is Tarabela 5 Hydro Project Extension Project. They actually support in their technical assistant and also investment as the status of the loan. And Nepal has a large project, and most of the people of this area affected, and most of the people have to change their livelihood pattern, all those things, and the community actually displaced this area, but after knowing this, but ADB also finance in this project. Yes. Next slide. And in this sector, I just said that transmission and distribution, in their energy sector project, there are so many subsector. Transmission distribution, ADB and AIB, both those power plant most finance in transmission and distribution, and focusing actually in this subsector. They invested to focused on the main grid upgradation and power distribution improvement under this subsector. And I also examined some things, the Indian project in Sikkim power sectors, which connect the one project to another project, and when they construct this transmission and distribution line, they have these communities people affected, and they have to change their livelihood, and also had to change their settlement pattern. Those transmission and distribution is vulnerable, more affect those community people actually. And when we talk about the AIB, AIB also in large investment in hydro project, and they actually AIB also investment in the transmission and distribution project, and Bangladesh and India focused actually in Bangladesh the distribution grid modernization project, and also Assam intro state transmission system enhancing project. They already established in the Indian Assam Pradesh. Next slide, please. In the subsectors, in their website, they also mention the energy efficiency and institutional development. But actually, it is the positive vibe, I think. But when I go into this side, then I monitor some things under these categories. The subsector they invested in power system efficiency investment project, but most of the time they support the brick sector development and building construction and reform and those projects actually support for those power plant and big development project. And when we talk about the institutional development, they in their website they mention the institutional development, and they provide the loan for the infrastructure reform also. And under the institutional development subsectors, and they reform ADB in ADB. In these subsectors, ADB actually support the false solution, which is one project is green hydrogen thought high technology, energy sector development and institutional reform. Already you know that Nad already mentioned the false solution, and under these subsectors they just wrote down the investment in this project, but not mention the those solutions. They just wrote down under these subsectors, but the investment in the hydrogen fuel and also false solutions project. Next slide. Um, this is the actually when they investment any kind of project, there is a lack of accountability, because the when this project established in any kind of sector areas, the affected community have no knowledge about this project. But and actually ADB and AIB both banks has the lack of accountability and transparency. Without proper concern of the project affected community, a bank actually bank finance this project, and who is construct on the bank of in this picture. This is the Rufsha 800 megawatt of gas-based power project. This on establish construct beside the rivers, and this river is the main livelihood resource for the communities people, but the most of the people are vulnerable for this project, and those people are affected for this project. And but these people have no knowledge about this project. ADB already have banned coal and gas, coal, but coal and gas sectors, but they and there is still loopholes like the energy transition mechanism and financial intermediates. Fossil gas language is still there in their policy, and many projects they support are not Paris aligned, and including the they also include the waste to energy and large hydro project and carbon capturing storage. All those projects they invested. Next slide. And I just yeah in this figure I just monitored the AIB and AIB project, and from 2016 to now they invested this, and in 2019 they had investment almost 2004 million USD, and when the COVID situation it had decreased, but and now this investment is 1,722 million USD. Next slide. The from 2010 to 2024, the ADB finance in and per year their investment is increasing, but 2017 to 2018 their investment is had decreased, and 2021, 2022 and 2023 their investment almost similar, and the lowest investment, and now their investment is 3,776 million USD. Next slide. ADB and AIB banks have no concern about this community, but the civil society are concerned about their affected community and their environment, And this is the civil society gathering in this and this gathering in Pakistan, and we within this South Asian country, ADBs had large investment in Pakistan. So and they had a Jamshoro coal-based power plant project investment, which is mainly based on coal. So these communities people have concern, and they have demand no coal and no fossil fuel investment in Pakistan, and they want to grow green network demand and ADB to halt fossil fuel financing. Next slide. And this is the movement of Bangladesh, and the demand of the civil society and local community of Bangladesh. They want to call ADB and AIB for more investment in renewable energy instead of fossil fuel gas project and pipeline. And AIB has large investment in pipeline and gas project in Bangladesh. So this movement is this movement for phasing the fossil fuel gas project, and in AIB and ADB should investment in more real renewable energy. Next. This is my recommendation. Actually, when I monitor all those projects, inside financial, most of the time they investment in the fossil fuel project, but not mentioned. They just categorize different name, and under these subsectors they include all those projects here. So ADB and AIB should have to phase out from gas and gas pipeline, coal and large hydropower project, because the large when they finance any kind of large hydro project, most the large amount of people have to displaced, and these people are affected. So hydro is renewable energy, but not beneficial for the community people. So so the Bangladesh people, Pakistani and the Indian affected community people concerned about this. And another recommendation, they should finance in the real renewables, considering the benefits of the local community, which actually I already mentioned. And banks should concern in their decreasing the finance in the fossil fuel and false solution, which is more expensive, because all those false solution are more expensive, and it is technically viable. This developing country cannot able to go with those false solution, high technology actually. And another concern, the next year they should enhance their finance in renewable sectors instead of fossil fuel. And those banks should be more accountable and transparent to disclose their financial things in their project. And they have to rethink to finance in those projects which are actually aligned with the Paris Agreement. Yes, that's all. Thank you, everyone. And my another colleague, Naz, she has some recommendation. So over to you, Naz, and please include your recommendation. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, thanks, Christy. Then can you please share the screen, share the presentation again? Okay, next slide. So I think Christy have laid down some of the major recommendations on our side. And forging ahead, no, COP29. Again, we would carry, some of the positions again on this, no, and number one would be climate finance should be given as reparations, no, not as loans or other profit-driven modalities. And aside from this, there must be a standardized disclosure of the climate finance, no, to avoid the risk of double counting, no, of what they're called climate finance, no. And more importantly, we also call for the banks, no, to shed out all of the problematic fossil fuel projects in the use of their climate finance. And second, again, the just transition framework must not be or must not only be concentrated on the energy sector, but it must also account basic human rights, environmental protection, labor rights, and gender issues. And third, no, climate standards must be cascaded from the bank down to the project proponents. No, it must not end on bank to country borrower, but it must go down. No, this climate standards must be cascaded down to the project implementers. No, to the sub projects as may be applied. No. And again, reiterating what Bristi have mentioned, the banks must close all the gaps, no, to coal and gas policies, no, and ensure definitive timelines for coal and gas phase out. And in addition, no, the banks should stop supporting false and techno fixes, no, like the CCUS, the hydrogen, waste to energy, large hydro, and large renewable energy, no. If the banks are serious, no, to on their Paris alignment goals, then they must throw out that technology agnostic approach to the bin. And as we have established earlier, we are now in the race to survival, no? And we cannot afford expanding or extending the last lifeline of these carbon emitters. So. And lastly, as we have said it before, and we will say it again, no, ADB and AIIB and all IFIs must take accountability, no, to the past and present harms brought by the fossil fuel projects that they are financing. So again, reparation plans must be set in place, and they must be held accountable to it. That's all po. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naz, and thank you, Brishti. Just a quick note that Nazareth Del Pilar is managing our Just Transition work here at NGO Forum on ADB, and Shamin Akhtar Brishti from Bangladesh is helping us with our fossil fuel campaign as we work through our networks and approaching our climate goals and climate targets. So without further ado, I think from all the evidence which was shared, I would request the participants to use the reaction button for a round of applause for our two speakers, and I would call upon civil society from our side who are actively going to COP29 this time in Azerbaijan, Baku, and who are going to bring very critical questions to development finance in the energy and climate space. Without further ado, I would like to call upon Chief Executive of the Coastal Livelihood Environmental Action Network, Mr. Hassan Mehdi from Bangladesh, to share his reactions on the presentation. And once again, a gentle reminder, we have colleagues from ADB and AIIB in the audience as well. Anything you want to share with them? Would love to hear.
A very pathetic scene of what Prishti and Nazareth presented. It actually shows that climate is just like a sugar coat, not actually, meaning something from the heart. So I think ADB will think about that and present something in the COP that what they are going to do actually. I saw that Prishti was, speaking about financing the hydrogen and CCS, including the ATM in Indonesia and other countries. And these all are false solutions. They are not actually, they will not reduce any carbon emission. They will only, increase burden on the communities, burden on the end users of electricity and other energy sources. So, it is all things, I don't know why these things are very important. I cannot understand from a part of like a like a citizen of Bangladesh or this type of countries. Uh, but I can understand why uh, these fossil fuel industries are getting more and more money in the name of false solutions and all false, approaches, because it is business and not a human being, and the communities are not the concern is whether business is running or not, whether they are maximizing their profit or not. That's, I hope that ADB will change their approach and go for green transition, not a false solution, not a sugar coating of climate change, climate crisis. Thank you very much.
Mehdi, any specific words for AIIB?
Yeah, both of them. The same.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the same.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mehdi. Looking at the portfolio as well, we see a heavy fossil fuel footprint in South Asia. Thank you, Mehdi, for your input. Moving across South Asia, I would like to call upon our colleague Majid Bhai from Indus Consortium to share his thoughts around this COP29, as well as any reactions which they want to share or calls they have around ADB and AI. Majid Bhai, over to you. Hey, you're on mute, sir.
Thank you for that. Firstly, let me thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for the presentation, both by Bristi and Nazareth. Is it okay if I could just use my own presentation here?
I don't know if we have sharing capabilities. Let me
Yes, we
just.
do.
Okay, please go ahead.
Just give me a second. So can you guys see the presentation, the first page?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, so before I get into the activities, just briefly starting with what Indus is and what we do. So Indus is an umbrella organization of 64 grassroots level organizations based in Pakistan, spread all over Pakistan. And the name Indus Consortium, basically because all the organizations we work with are based around the river Indus. Primarily, we work on 5 thematic areas: climate change, humanitarian work, water governance, fair finance, and just energy transition. Now, within these 64 organizations, as Bristi also made a mention to them, we took 23 organizations and made a separate cohort that works on climate change, etc., called the Grow Green Network. Now, within the energy transition program, we oversee 4 pillars of work. That is international finance, where ADB, AIIB, etc. come in. Apart from that, we do see green financing, fossil fuel phase out, fossil gas phase out, and corporate decarbonization. So primarily what Indus does, as some of you already know, for the others who do not know, is because we've got such a large grassroots level presence, we try to take the voices of the community, or the concerns of the communities affected by projects, including projects funded by MDBs, ADB, AIIB, etc., and we try to bring it to the global scale, to the global audience. We try to be the voice of these people. How do we do it? We do research studies, we advocate for change, and we do our very best to use international forums to highlight the concerns of the local communities. What we've done in the recent past, firstly, we've tried to be a bit more innovative going forward. We've tried to use media as a tool. And very recently, about month and a half back, we've organized a Climate Justice Youth Film Festival. And the purpose of this festival was to engage students from various universities in Pakistan on the effects of various energy projects on the local communities. We got some very good feedback. We got very good videos, and we've already displayed some of them on our own channels that we YouTube on our website possibly as well. And at least one of them we are hoping we can present at COP as well, which highlights the concerns of the communities to the global scale. At least that is the aim. Secondly, we have actually done a major study for us, which was around the ADB financing trends and safeguarding policies within Pakistan's energy sector. Now, why is that important? Because within Pakistan's energy sector, the biggest sector within Pakistan's various sectors that get funding from the ADB, energy sector is the biggest sector that gets funding from the ADB. Now, why is this important, or why was this study important? Because there are you invest in the energy sector, and we know energy sector comes with its problems. At least on ADB's part, they claim that they have tried to make amends, or they have got various policies to protect the local communities. They've got safeguarding policy, ESF, ETM, etc. But on the community level, there are still a lot of concerns. Some of, if I go on, I could highlight like 50, but I just shortlisted to top 4 or 5. So firstly, the language is too complex. If no one can understand your safeguarding policy, how can they take benefit from it? And that is number one. Number two, the reporting mechanism, the time frame is just almost non-existent. 2 years, I believe, at the moment. Most of these energy projects run for 20, 30 years. And if you are closing the reporting, the problem reporting time after 2 years, the local communities just cannot report the problems. And that is the concern communities in Pakistan face right now. Thirdly, whenever future roadmaps are developed, firstly, selective CSOs should not be engaged. It should be an open engagement with the civil society, the wider civil society organization. And it should be, just to give you an example, Pakistan ADB recently conducted its pre-feasibility study of lithium in Pakistan. This was not too far back. But after the pre-feasibility, there was no follow-up from the ADB. And we know because we at Indus Consortium were collaborating or communicating with the ADB as far as the pre-feasibility goes. So that is one other concern, to have continuous engagement and you don't cut it off in the middle. And the fourth major point that we are currently working on, that both Bristi and Nazareth did highlight in their presentation, that ADB needs for shutting down of the JPCL coal power plant. Now, JPCL coal power plant located in Jamshoro, by design, it has about 80% imported coal and 20% local coal, 20% local coal being lignite, the worst possible kind of coal. Coal itself is bad, and then the worst possible kind, that is the local coal in Pakistan, lignite. This is the breakdown of the Jamshoro coal power plant. Now, currently, I believe the government and ADB are in discussions to convert it completely to local coal. So firstly, you've got a coal power plant. It will be possibly run on the worst possible coal on planet Earth. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. It is located next to 3 universities, with all that pollution, the air pollution that the students are already feeling effects. Not just the students, it's located in the right smack in the center of the city of Jamshoro. And the people have problems. Now, where does the contaminated water go? It is just pushed out, and it is being taken from the power plant, and it will be thrown into the river Indus, um, affecting the downstream communities as a whole, killing of the remaining fish that we do have in the river. And at the moment, I believe they are in the process of acquiring land to create an ash pond around the Jamshoro coal power plant, which is going to further contaminate the local groundwater, uh, and the people of the location will not have access to clean drinking water. So, just
On that note, Majid bhai,
yes,
I have to close you on the sake of time. But
okay,
I do
perfect.
believe that Indus will carry the JPCL strongly in the COP29 and make a strong case for shutting down the JPCL. I hope because it's a
If you can give
disastrous
me
project.
30 seconds, one more point, and I'm done.
Sure, sure.
Okay, so in this regard, recently with the Grow Green Network, we have organized public forums within the 20 districts of Pakistan. One of the policy asks was for ADB to shut down JPCL and reinvest the money into renewable energy projects. For this, we have actually gotten over 3,000 signatures countrywide. And given that at the time, we had curfew at places as well. So we've had a decent turnaround, and we do hope to use this turnaround and public interest going into COP. Thank you.
Thank you, Majid bhai. I hope we are also part of those signatures, and we would request all our civil society allies to reach out to Indus on the sign-ons as well. And moving on in the region, I would like to call upon our friends from the Asia Pacific Movement for Debt and Development. I think Claudette might be here. Claudette, ADB, AIIB, fossil fuel, climate change. What's APMDD thinking?
Good afternoon, and thank you. Apologies if my background is a bit noisy. So indeed, as the COP, as mentioned by Naz earlier, will be tackling climate finance targets. And so EPMDD, together with many various organizations, is all set to raise the demand for governments, especially the global north countries and institutions that includes ADB, AIIB, and many others, corporations, to pay up for their role in the climate crisis. In terms of energy, at COP28, governments have committed to transitioning away from fossil fuels in the energy system. The COP29 must enable this agreement by delivering on the following: the new climate finance goal in trillions, not millions, to support a fast and fair transition away from fossil fuels, a commitment to stop fossil fuel expansion, a commitment to develop clear national phase-out timelines, and so we call on international and Asian public financial institutions to make an immediate wholesale shift from fossil fuel financing to renewable energy financing. Because it is just deplorable that public financial institutions as well as private banks continue
ठीक हो गया.
to.
नहीं, अक्सर मुझे ये दृष्टि का होता.
Majid bhai, can
Hello?
you kindly mute your microphone? Thank you.
Yeah. It's deplorable that these institutions, public and private, continue to finance and underwrite fossil fuel projects despite warnings that there's no more room for new oil, gas, and coal within this decade if we want to keep global warming below 1.5. Governments and institutions touting the urgency of a clean energy transition can make this happen quickly if they will shift all energy subsidies and financing to renewables now. For ADB and AIIB, as presented by Nas and Christie earlier, clearly they have a long way to go in terms of addressing their accountability in pushing for fossil fuels in Asia. So I share now related calls that we are carrying and pushing during the Global Days of Action for Climate Justice, happening on November 15 to 16 in Baku, Azerbaijan, and everywhere in the globe. We call on the global north to pay up for climate finance, pay up for climate debt, pay up at least no less than 5 trillion per year. Climate finance for the global south must be adequate, new, additional, public, non-debt rating, and unconditional. And democratic, transparent, and accountable and just transition. We also call for an end to fossil fuels and rapid, equitable, and just transition out of fossil fuels directly to 100% renewable energy. And no to gas as transition fuel, no to abatement, CCUS, ammonia for firing, geoengineering, carbon markets. Uh, these have also been in the recommendations earlier. So just to end, just inviting all the CSOs here. We will see you in Baku and in other parts of the world. Let's all mobilize and increase the pressure on governments, institutions, and corporations to compel them to deliver that urgent climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudette, for that call to action. We will definitely, from the forum side, respond to your call along with our other climate campaigners and allies everywhere. I would love to call upon our next civil society reactor, Recourse, who's based in the Netherlands and who works deeply on the ADB and AIIB portfolio. Would Petra come online and share their thoughts on the upcoming COP and the inputs today?
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you very much for organising this. And apologies that I'm a bit late. We had a bit of a clash this morning, but my colleague Marge was following the first part, and I think my colleague Kate is also online to follow a bit. So I'll try and be brief. Recourse will be attending COP. We'll be there both weeks. I will be there in the second week together with March, but we have our colleague Alison and Madeline, our comms officer, will be there in week 1, and we're also joined by partners from Trend Asia and from SIND in Ghana as well, and obviously hoping to work really closely with anyone else who will be there in person and also virtually beforehand. So in terms of our focus areas, so we're closely monitoring what the MDBs are doing themselves. I think one of the main things we're noticing is that they are already announcing events when they're pushing for full solutions, including around green hydrogen and so on. Missing from the conversations completely is Paris alignment. They've now decided they are Paris aligned, so they're not going to talk about it. And I guess one of the reasons for that is because, as we've discovered, I think all of us, that Paris alignment means very little when MDBs talk about this. Other thing they're talking about is their support for NDCs and long-term strategies and country platforms for climate action, which we still don't know what it is. So it'll be an opportunity to try and keep an eye on what messages they're putting out and how they're moving forward with these platforms. I know Bangladesh was originally one of the pilots, but I don't think that progressed much. So that's another thing we're going to keep an eye on. Obviously, fossil fuels will continue to be something that we'll be looking particularly at. For those who don't know, we published a report on AIIB's capital market projects just in time for the AIIB's annual meeting. So we'll be continuing to push those messages out. So basically what we found was that these so-called environmental and social governance funds, as they sometimes are called as well, actually continue to push fossil fuels. So we'll be continuing to focus on that. We're obviously also continuing to look at how ADB is engaging in terms of the environmental and social framework and what kind of messages they are pushing out. We know, as others have already highlighted, the problems that remains with ADB, including the Jamshoro coal power plant. So we'll continue to look at that. I also saw that they are again launching IFCAP, their initiative that they keep launching about every COP. So I haven't really looked much into that, but that's something we'll keep an eye on as well. Some of you will have seen that we launched, and some of you will have joined our call for banking on renewables as well, which was launched for the World Bank annual meetings. So we'll be taking those messages with us around the importance of the shift out of fossil fuels into renewables, but also a focus on what does that mean in practice? What types of renewables are being supported? Are communities being involved? What's the right dimension of this and gender dimensions of this? So we'll be continuing to push those messages out as well. And then our flagship publication is a report on MDB's climate finance that I think quite a few of you in this group have seen drafts of, and we're hoping for your support. It's basically a report that exposes what MDBs mean when they talk about climate finance, when they say they've gone above 100 billion in 2023 on climate finance. What does that mean in practice? And exposing the fossil fuel loopholes that are there in terms of how they define and count for climate finance, the mixture of projects where a project can be labeled as climate finance or part of it, even though the rest of it is a greenfield gas power plants, as we've seen in Bangladesh. Waste to energy, with much thanks to Gaia and their research and other bits and pieces. I'm not going to go through it all here. I think NGO Forum have already talked a bit about these kind of problems. So the plan is to launch this report in a week's time, which is the same day as the MDBs have their flagship event where they're going to talk about climate finance. So fingers crossed that all comes together in time. Just a flag as well for those who are at COP that there's a side event on Saturday. I'll see if I can find the details and share that here. So we'd obviously want you to join that. We also share a stall with CAN and the Big Shift Coalition on week 2 from Saturday evening until Thursday that week. So please do come by and say hello if you happen to be going to Baku. I think that's it in the interest of time, but I'm sure I've missed a few things and happy to chat further.
Thanks. Thank you, Petra. And yeah, it's excellent that these reports are coming out in tandem with the launching of the joint MDB and the MDB session. We look forward, hopefully, to come up with a collective statement out of this webinar based on the information presented and all the calls being mentioned from civil society. I also wanted to flag to everyone that the information that was presented today from our side is available upon request. If anybody wants to have a look at the slides, just feel free to email the NGO Forum Secretariat, and we will be providing the information. For those who are attending from the bank side, you might ask, oh, you guys didn't get a chance to speak in our civil society event. That's exactly how we feel sometimes going to your events where we don't get a microphone to speak. But that's not why this is. That's not the intention. The intention was for you to have a sneak peek into the civil society discussion around COP29. And I hope all of you who are going, both from the financing side, from civil society, get to continue the debate in Azerbaijan. And with those last words, I would like to thank all of you, for those of you who have come in and closed the session for today. For civil society representatives, we would request you to stay on the call because we want to discuss a little bit more about our plans and about our planning for COP29. So for civil society, we'd request you to stay on. Perhaps we can take a 5-minute break for clearing the room, and we will resume in 5 minutes. Is that all right, Jen? Just checking.
Yes. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.